Hi everyone, this is the third video of week 4. Okay, we are still on Route 2. So it's just some corrections or details on what I went verses 15, 16, and 17, which I described in the last video. One, I looked up how much an AFA is, and I don't know if this makes more sense to me, but it is about 22 liters of this stuff. So, okay. 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 Also, a correction. In verse 17, I said this was a hifil va tavot. Okay, tavot. It is not. It is a call. Now, the reason why. So you may say, well, why did you say it was a hifil? It's because I had a long prefix, and so then you would ask, why do you think it's a call now? It's because the reason why. So these rules, none of these rules are, mistake proof, right? The reason why, even though this verb is a call, it has a long prefix, this patak, instead of their usual hirit, right? It's because the first letter of the triconsonantal root of this verb is a het. Okay, it's because it's this guttural. Okay, and what usually happens when there's a guttural is that it turns into a patak schwa. You'll see an ah. Okay, it should be tahabot. Okay, and what happens is that tahabot eventually becomes tahbot. Okay, now if this was an olive, okay, ta'abot, it would actually remain ta'abot. Okay, in the call. Okay, but because it is a chet and not an olive, which is a slightly different guttural, and because Hebrew doesn't always follow everything, all the rules that you want, this is a hirik that has been turned long because it is followed by a guttural, and the guttural, which should also have had a patak, that patak has dropped out. Okay, in short, you don't need to know all the details of that. I was wrong. This is a call. Okay, and indeed, what alerted me, and as I was saying it, I did wonder about it. What alerted me as to the fact that this might not be a hifil is this kind of middle consonant. Remember that hifils usually have like e sound, right? So this should be tahbit, okay, instead of tahbot. And the short middle sound also kind of tells you that this may not be a hifil. Okay, I'm gonna go on. Okay, so with verse 18. Okay. Okay, so we left off with Ruth beating out this amazing amount of food that she had gathered, and now therefore she goes back home, right, or to Naomi. Okay, so vatisa vatavo ha'ir. Okay, and so she and nasa really means there's a missing nun here. The root of this word is nun, sin olive, right? The nun has become absorbed. Okay, and nasa means to raise up. Okay, you see this word. I think there's a Psalms that says, lift up your heads, O gates. Okay, whatever. Okay, so this means to raise up, and so probably the better translation is she lifted maybe it up. She lifted this huge amount of grain that she had gathered. And she went, okay, or came, okay, bo ha'ir, to the city, okay. And now notice a string of verbs, right? Va te re hamota et asher liketa, okay? And she showed, okay? Her hamota, her mother-in-law, ate, okay? Asher, all that, I mean, I would kind of emphasize, right? And she showed her mother-in-law all that she had gleaned. Okay, because I do think there's a lot more exclamation points here that you have to kind of subtly pick up. Okay, and she vatutse vatitenla. Okay, and she brought it out, right? She caused it to come out, right? She brought it out, right? And she gave it to her. Vatitain. This is from Natan Nun. Tav. Nun, okay? And as you know, Natan, the word to give, because it has so many nuns, will absorb and conjugate in a crazy way, okay? So just take my word for it that this is from Natan. And she brought it out and she gave it to her. Okay. And the fact that she is like doing all this stuff, right? That she's like, carrying it and like bringing it and then showing it. It seems to hint pretty strongly, right? And that even Ruth realizes, like, oh my God, this is way more than I thought I was gonna get to glean. Okay. Because she's like almost doing like a show and tell here. Okay. Um, and then it kind of the text kind of emphasizes that by these kind of last four words. Eight asher hotira mishbaha. Okay, misabaha. Okay, misabaha. Okay, that okay, so she showed to her and she brought it out and she gave it to her, and you can say that she had and her leftovers, okay, and that which was leftover from her satiety. Okay, so it's a little bit tricky, right? So there's two ways to read what it says, right? You can say, oh, she gave her all this grain. Okay. And also, and this is how it's usually read, also what was the leftover, what she had left over from after eating that lunch that Boaz provided, after she was kind of full from it, from being satisfied. That's one reading. The Hebrew is a bit, I have to say, a little dicey, right? And that, it seems to, another way to read it is that hotira, right, meets sabah, is again a kind of an emphatic description of how much she had gleaned. Okay, is it that she had leftovers and she's giving her mother-in-law Naomi these leftovers as well as all this food, or and so I do wonder whether this is a better kind of vision imagery, that they're describing how much she also brought home from her gleaning, right? And that it was right, hotira, and it was way beyond, or there was leftover from satiety. That this is the description really of how much she had gleaned. Okay, now how to translate that? I mean, I don't know. Gave she lifted it and she came to the city and she showed her mother-in-law and brought out and gave to her what was left over from being sated. I don't think. Okay. I'm just gonna, okay. The important thing to realize, of course, is that this word is repeated before, right? And therefore re-emphasized, right? And so the point of chapter 2 really seems to be this kind of stressing over and over the fact how once she finds favor in Boaz's eyes, once they return to Israel, they don't just get enough, they get like way beyond enough. Okay. So going onwards, Vatomer la hamota. Okay, and so now Naomi responds to Ruth's kind of show and tell. Okay, and he says, and she said to her, her mother-in-law, okay, Efa likat hayom va'ana asit. Okay, okay, I'll stop there. He says, where did you glean today? And again, like I said, I think there's like a lot more exclamation marks here than it's in the Hebrew, right? Where in the hell did you glean today? And again, to show the surprise, right, and to show the emphasis, right, it's repeated again. And what, what did you do? Like, how did this happen, right? And then going onwards, right? Yehi makireh Baruch, right? And this is kind of a dense phrase here. And she said, may the one who nakar, right? This word that I talked about in the last set of videos, right? May the one who singled you out, who treated you with favor, the one who recognized you, right? Because nakar means to both recognize and not recognize, because it's the same word used for a stranger or an outsider. right? May the one who singled you out, may the one who recognized you, may he be blessed, Baruch. Okay, and this is, of course, the beginning of that famous prayer with Baruch, Atah Adonai, blessed are you, O Lord. Okay, I'll get to this in a minute. Okay, so the fact that she's like, oh my God, what did you do today? Where the heck did you go? Whoever it was that helped you out, oh my, thank God. Again, it may signal a couple of things. One is, of course, Naomi is surprised, as Ruth is also surprised as to how much they were able to gather, that this is not like a normal amount. Again, the point of this narrative is to emphasize the egregiousness of Hesed, God's Hesed to his people in Israel. Okay, so I think that's one, right? The other thing is, that this, especially at the very end, Yahi Makireh Baruch, right? The fact that Naomi is going from saying, what happened, to like, oh, thank God, right? Maybe again signals that they are still indeed quite desperate. You almost get the sense that she's like, oh, thank God you were able to bring home this much food. And who would say that? They're still starving, so, they're really only eating what she can gather. Okay, and that is only barely enough. So when you get this huge amount, she's saying, oh my God, thank God you were, it's like, thank God your paycheck came in. Okay, because our cupboards are empty, right? And so it also has that kind of sense of desperation still, and the sense of the precarious position that they're in also embedded within it. Okay, like I said, the fact that she says, makirek, this emphasis on the car, this word that was emphasized in the earlier part, um, of chapter 2 is important, right? And this word Baruch, right? And there's again a lot of, I think, some wordplay here. Makirech Baruch, may the one who singled you out be blessed. May the one who recognized you be blessed. May this kind of double meaning of Nakar, somebody who recognizes you and somebody who you don't recognize, right? This the outsider, right? And notice that again, Baruch, who la Adonai, that you'll see again, this repetition of Baruch, okay? And what it has this lovely kind of, piling up of connotations, right? Where you get this idea that, who is blessed? Well, the one who, singles out or notices even, right? Those who are poor, or who is the outsider and who is struggling. So Boaz, right? They are blessed, right? The ones who act as, who makirech, okay? Those who are, unfortunate in society, right? So Boaz and those like him are said to be blessed, right? You who notices, the poor and the meek and the outsider, right? It also has a secondary connotation because of the fact that nakar can mean to recognize or not to recognize, right? The stranger, right? The outsider, may they be blessed, right? The outsider is blessed. And of course, what we see here is a demonstration of Ruth the Moabite, which they keep emphasizing, right? Again, to emphasize her outsider status, that she is blessed, okay? Though she is an outsider, okay? And again, you can kind of extend that, right? May those who are outsiders in society, they are blessed. May they be blessed, right? And of course, this last thing that we're coming to, right? So Ruth is blessed, Boaz and people like him are blessed, right? And of course, later Baruch hu la Adonai, this can be read in a variety of, of course, we know that Boaz is being used as a conduit of God, right? And so in some ways, God is blessed and God is using people to be a kind of source of blessing, okay? So there's lots going on underneath, again, the use of this word. And again, maybe I will talk about a bit more when it is repeated, okay? Just, you don't need to know this. I have not asked you to parse this, okay? Baruch, this is in the passive participle, okay? And I think I said in a video before, I don't know, okay? A lot of times this oo sound is an indication, a hint that it is in the passive form. May somebody be blessed, Okay, be blessed. The be part is what makes it passive, right? And this, and in Hebrew, this oo sound is a lot of the times an indicative of the passive. You know, the hopeful has this oo sound. What is it? The pual, all these the pual is the passive counterpart of the pl. The hopeful or the hoopful is the passive part of the hiphil. A lot of times the oo sound indicates something further away and therefore passive. Okay. So she says, may the person who singles you out, may they be blessed, right? Vataged la hamotach et asher asata imo, okay? And she told, and now there's some radical shifts of persons. She told, it's probably Ruth, right? And again, the root here is nun gimel dalet, okay? The nun has become absorbed into this tiny little dot in the gimel, right? This is indeed in the hiphil, right? Because of this long prefix. Okay. Also, I think this word only occurs in the hiphil, but whatever. Okay, so she told or recounted, I think, to her mother-in-law, that is now Ruth. Okay, Eitasher asata imo, and literally it says that which she did with him. Okay, now again, translation dicey because you got to make it work nice in English. Okay, and so a better translation is she told to her mother-in-law with whom she did, and then you got a parentheses, her work, right? With whom she did her work. Okay. And going further, or spelling out in more particular what she told her mother-in-law, Vatomer Shem Haish Asher Asiti Imo Hayom Boaz. Okay, now you gotta, and she told, and I'll translate it literally first and then make it nicer at the end. And also she told the name of the man with whom or which she did with him today, Boaz. Okay, see again, this is why wooden translations don't work great. So again, you got to smooth that out. Okay, so from the very beginning, she told her mother-in-law with whom she did her work, and she said, her work, and she said the name of the man with whom she did her work. It was today was Boaz. Okay, so notice again, when you get to translation, it's more art, right? So it's not just knowing the meaning of the words, but how do you fit them together to make it make sense in a different language, okay? Now, okay, and now one can kind of, what knowing the actual Hebrew words does open you up for is that, of course, you can translate it differently, right? Because, of course, what's weird is, with whom she did that which she did with him, right? And the name of the man that she did with him, and this with him, part of it may be just, the phraseology is different in Hebrew. But of course, what she's saying is interesting because on the one hand, right, he didn't really do any of the work, right? But we know that the person behind all that she was able, all that she gathered, the reason why she has so much food, right, is because of Emo. He, it's really Boaz that's kind of making it happen. Now, also, right, notice it's only at the very, very, very end of this verse that we find out the name with whom she did this work is Boaz, right? And it may be that you have this weird phrasing, right? Because, with whom she did her work, right? Who was working with her? Who was working beside her? Well, yeah, at the end we find out it's Boaz, but again, maybe another kind of hint that God is with her in the field, right? And then that's why it keeps saying with him, without telling you the name until the very end. And of course, even at the end, when it's Boaz who's named, right, we know that Boaz is the conduit through which God will work to revive the family of Naomi, right, and to lift these poor widows from destitution into a life of comfort and protection. Okay, so it may be that the emo, is deliberately vague, okay, or a hint that the writer wants you to think beyond just Boaz, okay. All right. Going onward, okay. Verse 20, Vatomer Naomi la kalama kalata, okay. Batomer, Naomi, la kalata, Baruch hu la Adonai. Okay. And she said, that is Naomi, okay, to her now daughter-in-law. Okay, so it's very interesting, how these characters are phrased, right? And notice that when Naomi and Ruth are talking, what's emphasized is their kin relationship, her mother-in-law, her daughter-in-law, right? Again, the emphasis of the story is on family and kinship. Okay, so it kind of emphasizes that, oh, by the way, if you wanted to know how these women are related, okay, they're family, right? So it has that kind of nice emphasis, okay? And now this repetition, Baruch hu la Adonai. Okay, and there's many ways to read this. Again, it's interesting that you have so much blessing, right? One way to read it, or the common way to read it, is blessed is he who, right? He, right? To Yahweh, right? And the he again is a bit ambiguous to me, right? You can say, blessed is he, that is Boaz, okay, to Yahweh, or telling you again how Boaz is really a conduit. He's being used by God. Or a better way to put it is how God uses other people to become a source of blessing and comfort, okay, and empathy to others, especially those who are on the fringes of society, the marginalized, the outsider, okay. Another way to read it is blessed, blessed is he who, God. Okay, may God Yahweh be blessed. So that's another kind of way to read it. Okay, blessed is he indeed Yahweh. Okay, is I think prepositions, like I said, are a bit dicey, right? Are a bit ambiguous in a different language, right? So it's hard to know. What you see here that I think is very interesting is how Boaz and Yahweh are kind of coming in and out. Okay, and of course this is interesting because, like I said, Boaz's name is interestingly also the name of the pillar that holds up God's temple, right? And of course, God's temple is another kind of symbol of the presence of of Yahweh, right? So it's Boaz is a kind of symbol of Yahweh. And of course the temple where you have two pillars, right? Boaz being one is also a symbol of Yahweh. Okay, so going onwards. Okay, so you can translate it however you want, and Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, blessed is he to Yahweh, or blessed indeed is Yahweh. Blessed is he indeed Yahweh. Okay. Asher lo azav hatsto. Now we have this lovely reemergence, or reuse of hesed. Okay, for lo azav his hesed. So lo for lo is a not. Azav is to. It actually means, it's like all Hebrew words now sound like what they mean now in my head. Okay, which is very confusing. Azav means to abandon. Okay, azav also means to me absolve. Okay, to kind of abandon, to leave aside, to forget, right? Blessed is he, or blessed is Yahweh, who did not abandon his hesed. Okay, and this is why I say it can be either Boaz or Yahweh. Okay, that is being mentioned here. Blessed blessed is he to Yahweh. Okay, who does not abandon his kindness. Okay, his loving kindness, his again, an untranslatable word, right? This generosity, right? This being good and in solidarity with the poor. I mean, it has that kind of meaning, right? And then going onwards, et ha-hayim v'et ha-metim, with either, who did not abandon his, and I will leave you to, his hesed, yeah, either with the living and also with the dead. Okay. So we have this again, and it's important that Hesed is mentioned here, because again, all of chapter 2, and indeed all of the story of Ruth, but in particular chapter 2, with this emphasis of the gratuitousness of food, the words of comfort, the piling up, the having enough, so much, right? That all is supposed to demonstrate right? What hesed looks like. Okay, so of course it's kind of a nice finish almost to mention the word that everybody is thinking and seeing kind of played out by Naomi, right? And of course, Naomi gets it right away. She says, "Oh my gosh, I get it, right? I thought I was abandoned, right?" She says at some point that I don't have you translate. Don't when she arrives into Bethlehem, she says, don't call me Naomi, don't call me pleasant because my life is not pleasant, right? She says instead call me Mara, right, which means bitter, to be bitter, right? Because and of course, at this point, by verse 20, you have a complete transformation of Naomi, who has realized, oh my God, something bigger is happening here, right? And what's happening, as she rightly interprets, is Hesed, okay? A demonstration of Hesed, this kind of gratuitous kindness and love that is undeserved, okay? So she kind of gives you an interpretation, or the text interprets itself, okay, through Naomi, right? The afflicted, okay. And notice how she says, this hesed not only just to the living, right, to the ones that need to eat and breathe, right, but also to the dead. And of course, you're saying, well, how is this, demonstrating a hesed to the dead? And of course, it has to do with the purpose of levirate marriage, right? Where part of the reason why you had this institution of levirate marriage was that so that the widows will be protected, right? Certainly, so the ones that are left behind are protected, but also, as it says, so that the name of the man will not cease, right? So that this man won't be forgotten. And indeed, some scholars have said that there are actually some very good hints in Israel that they practice something like ancestral worship, right? That just like, in the movie Coco, if you were forgotten, you really kind of disappeared. And so it was very important that you have descendants, male descendants in particular, who will kind of not continue to worship you, but continue your memory. Okay, and that's how you exist maybe in the afterlife. We don't know that much about the afterlife in Israel, but okay. So going forward, because I'm going on time. Okay. Vatomer la Naomi, karov lanu ha'ish, migo aleinu. Okay, and she spells this out because, of course, this is verse 20 is when she recognizes, oh my gosh, there's a larger, more divine plan of Hesed that's going to that is about to come to fruition, that is at work here, right? And so she spells that out even more so, right? Because of course there are some hints that Ruth doesn't get it quite as quickly as Naomi does, okay? And she said to her, that is Naomi said to her, Ruth, okay, the man, Ha'ish, Karov, right? He is near. Karav means to be near. Okay, he is near to us, or I would say, the man is related to us. Oh my God, he's related to us from our Gaal, our redeemers, our Goels. He's one of our redeemers. Okay, and of course, Gaal is a word that is used for not only human, with God's redemption quite a bit, right? What she means by Goal here is, again, she is referring to levirate marriage, okay? And the brother who is tasked with reviving the name of the dead brother, right? By taking the widow as his wife for a period to have a child in the name of the deceased is called a goel, right? Because he is the one through whom that family line of the dead brother, as well as that widow, is redeemed. Okay, so what what you see here is, like I said, Naomi gets it right away. She sees, she has this moment where she sees the huge amount of food, the grain, right? Realizes that Ruth has stumbled onto Boaz's field, right? And says, oh my gosh, I think I know what's going on. This is, I thought, God had abandoned me, but no, instead, what I'm seeing is the beginning of this plan of Hesed. Okay. So it's a very kind of lovely, kind of transformational kind of phrase here. Okay. Okay, well, I will talk more about the last set of verses in the next video.